Hi, Harnoor. We're starting from the top with your introduction. Sweet.
Yep.
Okay. So, Harnoor, a little bit about you so that our viewers know, right? You graduated from PEC in CSE in 2014. You did your internship with Goldman and then you moved with a PPO to Goldman. I think you've been there for 6 years. Your latest position as a vice president in listed derivatives. And in
Yeah.
2020, you're now an MBA candidate with Yale, and you're also on the Dean's Scholarship Program,
Yes.
Uh,
right?
yeah, so the Dean Scholarship Program that was for the Global Leaders from India Scholarship Program. So I would like to put some more light on this. I would want you to add on to this and tell us about the factors which we should keep in mind with respect to financing for education. Like, how did you go about the scholarship and how did you plan on, and then
Okay.
go ahead.
Sure. So even before scholarship, right? Like we'll come to that. There are a few other things which you should think about if you're thinking about like financing your education outside of India. Okay. Education is costly. Okay. Mostly like anywhere you go. In US, it's I think a bit more costlier than like other places than Canada, and also it's very important for you to first decide and lock on to like where you exactly want to go. Okay. Might be driven by cost factors, might be driven by like where you have some family or where you want to be long term. That again matters, right? Like if you want to settle in some place and for long term, it makes sense to do your masters or like your further education from that point. Okay. So you always have to look at the costs from a very long term perspective. Don't immediately look at like, oh, this is how it's costing me and this is what I think I have to like get in, and this is what other place is costing me, and this is what I have to pay there, so I'll go into like the other place because that costs less. You have to look at these things from a very long term basis where you are looking at as in how much return on investment do I think I'll get in like 5 or 10 years, right? Because these, especially your education, has very long term perspective. You're going to get an education, so always think from that perspective. Never think of like, oh, how much a college costs. Okay. Think about what the return on investment is. There would be places where you the education does not cost much, but there isn't much return on investment that you look 5 years or 10 years down the line, right? And there would be places where you pay a lot upfront. Okay. But then the eventual salary hike or boost it gives you, or like the amount of job opportunities it's able to give you, will be much better for you. Okay. So that is sort of one aspect of it which is like slightly different from this. Okay. Then you come on to like, oh, how do you actually finance your education, right? Okay. So there are a few things how you can actually finance it even before we come to scholarships. Okay. Indian banks do give loans. They are collateralized loans, so you can like sort of talk to SBI or like any of the big banks. Okay. They charge you somewhere around like, I think somewhere around like 10 to 11% when I was looking for it, but these rates have gone down in the past year or so. Uh, they are collateralized loans, so you actually need to have some sort of collateral like your house or something like that, which you need to put up as collateral. Okay. If you The good thing is in India, education loan is tax exempt, the interest portion of it. So if you take your loan, your your interest basically by default goes down 30% if you're in that tax bracket. Okay. Which is actually pretty good if your parents have take loans for you. Okay, so that's how you something you take into consideration when you take a loan in India. Okay.
Of course.
you Yeah, you can take a loan outside of India. Okay. And most of your colleges like where you apply do have some lender programs in US. Okay. Where colleges would have a preferred lender, and like that lender guarantees you a loan. Okay. For the purpose of your studies, and then they would pay the college directly, and then you just use that money for your residential purposes too. That is another probability. The amount is like the interest is a bit lower on those loans. Okay. But then again, it depends a lot case by case basis because it's a non-collateralized loan. The college is sort of acting as a collateral. And then it is like this specific type of loan is not like reimbursable. Like Indian government does not recognize it as an education loan, so no tax credits. That is what you pay. Plus, you still have to think a bit more about like your USD to INR volatility, right? In the sense that if you take a loan in India, okay, and Indian currency falls like or depreciates a lot, you still have to pay that in INR, okay, versus like whatever you would pay in USD. Or you take a loan in USD and you come back to India, you have to pay that loan in the originating currency. So that is something which you should keep in mind. Okay. Post that, like if you look at just the scholarships bit, right? Okay, scholarships are actually very competitive. Okay, especially for foreign education. Like a lot of people are looking for scholarships, and there are quite a few scholarships which are available. Okay. A lot of the scholarships are like, I think for scholarships it works best if you can like target something which they are offering to a specific people. Like means there would be, for example, scholarships. I know of a friend who did like, oh, girl students who wants to do masters master's in computer science. Okay, and if you sort of fit that criteria, your chances of getting that scholarship are much higher. Okay, and there are government funded scholarships even in India, which so the first thing which you have to do is to look at the universe of what is available, right? Okay, like means it would be different across colleges, like, and it would like there are some scholarships which are offered across all of this, like means they're offered like just by education, like for all MBA students anyone can apply and get in. There are scholarships which are very specific, like for means this is like for just masters in like Columbia University or something like that. It depends on who is funding the scholarship and like how it is being dispersed and all. So, but that being said, like how you would go about this journey is like you start with exactly like knowing what do you want to do, right? And then like finding out what is the available options across for those scholarships, like means which scholarships are available in the market as of now. Okay, and what time do you need to apply for them? How do you need to apply for them? For some scholarships, they do have like applications where they want you to like write as to like what do you think you will, what impact do you will bring in that space, right? So it's not just as simple as applying with your resume or something. Okay, and some of them do actually have conditions, like means so there is this very good like Dhirubhai Ambani scholarship which gets offered to Stanford students, but it has a condition that you have to come back to India. Okay, like they cover all your fees and everything, but the condition is like you will eventually have to come back to India. Okay, because they say that, oh, India is sort of paying for your MBA, so you come back and help India grow. Which again is, so you have to look at all of that. Okay, but for your specific education, like whatever you're trying to do, like a master's or an MBA or something like that, look at what scholarships are available first, and there are so many sources where you will find those. Okay, usually reaching out to the universities itself is a very good first step. So if you know like which universities you are going to apply to, just reach out to all of them and ask them like, oh, what scholarships are available, and they would very happily provide you that. Okay, uh, take that list, see what you're eligible for in them, like what you can apply for and what do you think fits your pattern. Okay, apply to all of them. Like I would say, make some effort to make those applications. A lot of times the colleges themselves would have a scholarship, like they have their own scholarships because they are competing for the same students, like especially in MBA. So what happens is like there is a very limited MBA pool, right? Okay, and every college is sort of trying to compete for the same MBA students and they want students to be in. Okay, and the scholarships is a way they give you to sort of like make their college more attractive to you. Okay, so they will give you scholarships so that like you end up choosing their college, and that again is like sort of works for you, right? At the most of these scholarships are like part of your like your college application itself. So what happened with me was like for me specifically, this scholarship I did apply for few other scholarships which I did not get. All of them are very competitive, but this scholarship was part of like so it's part of like the MBA experience at Yale. So they want like certain specific students from India, like they have a number, and to promote that they have this scholarship set up from India, which is the Global Leaders from India program. Eventually you're competing with like who all gets in from India into Yale, and based on that they decide like who is getting this scholarship. Okay. And eventually based on that they told me that, oh, if you want to come we will offer you the scholarship, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. I did not have to make any special like application for, at least for scholarship.
Mhm. So this scholarship, wala, the whole thing, we have a lot of clarity. But like as somebody who's applied to a lot of these, koi hack hai, like some things we should keep in mind when we're making these scholarship applications. Right? कि ये चीजें तो करनी है.
I think there isn't any hack per se, like because if there was, a lot of people would have exploited it by now. There is definitely a lot of competition, so I know like you don't get most of the applications you make in. Okay, my best advice would be to be as specific as possible. Okay, in the sense that try to find a scholarship which is as much applicable to you as possible, right? Like if you find a scholarship which targets your area of research or your like whatever you did undergrad in, okay, maybe like sometimes like targets your regional country, like girl students from India, okay, which sort of fits again, like it narrows down the parameters, and then like certain girl students from those, like try those scholarships. They have much better chance of like being dispersed to you than like a generic scholarship.
Okay.
Right,
Uh,
right. So
yeah, you should continue.
from there, so you worked for 6 years in the industry, and then you went for MBA. So what made you wait for those 6 years to finally get into that particular MBA course of yours? Because a lot of time people are confused when exactly do they shift to this platform of higher studies. So
Sure. Okay. So it basically it differs. Like there are usually two choices which most of the folks have. Like they want to do either an MS, which is like a technical degree, or they want to do an MBA, which is a more functional degree. Okay. In US, if you look at like US schools, the average age of an MBA, like sorry, average years of experience of an MBA candidate is 5 years. Okay, so I'm not much higher than that. Like I'm an year above. Okay, but the average itself is 5 years, which means like most people are going to have like 5 years worth of experience. Okay, that being said, okay, in India, I think that isn't true, right? Like most folks would do an MBA after 2.5 years. Okay, it I can answer this for like MBA. I think the answer is very different for MS, where you want to just do a technical degree, learn a lot more about like what you want to do, and just basically get a job in that field, like a more advanced job. In an MBA, that is pretty different, right? Okay, MBAs are meant more for you to know how to apply what you already know. It's a very practical degree. Okay, and most of the schools expect you to have like quite a bit of experience, right? In US, I think the minimum they would want you to have experience they want you to have is like 2 years. Okay, so they wouldn't even consider your application before 2 years. Some colleges do have programs for like 0 years of experience, like right out of undergrad, and then like they go to 2 years. But most of the colleges start with 2 years. Some do even now start with 3 years experience, like minimum 3 years, and then start from there and eventually like look at like how much experience do they want. A lot of your MBA experience is driven by your colleagues. It's not it's driven by like your professors too. Okay, and professors like where I'm studying, they're like extremely smart. They're all very accomplished in their field. But a lot of times they just like basically introduce a topic, okay, and they open it up to class discussion, and they're like, oh, you discuss and tell us like how it is like, and everyone is sort of giving their own opinion. Okay, and what matters in that scenario is like how diverse your class is, okay, where they are coming from. And for USB schools, it matters a lot to them, right? Like they want their class to be as diverse as possible. They want them to be coming from like a very like regional diversity or like educational diversity, work diversity. And they are very like for I'll give you an example. So I have a fellow who, and she is basically, she was a museum curator. Okay, and I never knew someone who like was a curator at museum. She was buying art and then like helping sell it. Okay, I have people who were like means who were basically deployed in Afghanistan as part of US military. I know someone who was a captain at a US military career, and like means it's very different like how like the amount of people you would find. Okay, so the point which I'm coming to is like colleges do value what you come to the college with. Like the experience is very valued, and that sort of helps you get into a better college, and then again like get more scholarships if you want. And this is just like specifically true for MBA. I don't think this matters a lot for MS, but for MBA, it's very true. Okay. For me, I don't think like I came into like my job thinking about like, oh, I want to do an MBA, so let me look at the quickest way possible out of it. Okay, this preference sort of evolved over time. Like means I started my job, I loved it. Like I still look back at my time at Goldman like very fondly. It was a pretty nice experience. I learned a lot. Okay, eventually after some time, like I think after like 5 years or so, I became like very siloed into that role, in the sense that, oh, I joined a financial services firm and I was looking at like some team, and then like I was like it just like that horse which has like his eye set just on the front, and I was just looking at that and nothing else. And I thought maybe I should spend a bit more time, okay, like diversifying my knowledge and like my experience, now that it was possible, and like now that I could do that. And that is when I thought about doing an MBA. So that's when I made my MBA application and eventually got in through pretty quickly. But it wasn't a procedure like, oh, I want to do an MBA and like that's all I'm going to think about and going to see like what's the best way to do that. It was actually the reverse way around. Okay, and one thing which I will tell you is, okay, for foreign MBAs, like anywhere outside of India, the why MBA question is very important, and every college will ask you that. Okay, like, oh, why do you want to do an MBA? Okay, and you can't say, oh, I just want an MBA degree for a job, or I just wanted like to improve my pay package in the same role. Okay, there has to be some tangible thing which you say that, oh, I want to do an MBA because I want to have this skill, or I want to grow in this field or break into this field which I currently do not have. Okay, and that is very important. So you should look into that, like means, and I think that's important for you too. You should look into your own reasons as to why do you want to do an MBA, right? Like it's not just like, oh, you always want to do that. Think about what do you want to do and why do you want to do it, and then sort of see like how you can get there.
So I think these years of period Goldman Sachs get that scholarship because it was good.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think that experience was very valuable. If I had like lesser years of experience, I might not have had that scholarship at Yale. Okay. It's again sort of a trade-off, right? Like you're spending more years of your life. But for me, that trade-off wasn't like, oh, will I get more scholarship? Because I had something at work and I was enjoying that. I did get like some foreign experiences. I came to US to set up a team. So I was getting like very good visibility at my work and all of that was working fine. But then I was like, oh, maybe I'm missing something and I'm going to get very siloed into this and I'm going to move about. But that experience which I could sell as like a positive point, right? Like I have 6 years of experience, which is higher than your average, and I have done this. I have like set up a team internationally. I have done this and that, and I during my speech, like means the interviews which I did for my MBAs and like in my essays which you have to write, I could exactly highlight those things. And I think they were definitely a differentiating factor in like the scholarship.
Also, I would like to ask that since you transitioned from the very stable position of a vice president of a company like Goldman Sachs, and like what made you decide to opt for an MBA amidst this? Because you started your MBA in the year 2020, so that was exactly the time when the entire world was grappled by the COVID situation and everything was falling down financially. So like what is your driving factor behind that? Like, don't you think that it's a bit scary to transition from a working stable position into a student's life and then go to study MBA and then
Okay. I think very interesting question, right? But there are a few different ways to look at like how you would approach this. Okay. If you look at purely from a job market standpoint, right? Just look at like where how the MBA job market is. Okay. Consulting jobs are at as great as they have been. Okay. IB activity is happening at record pace. So MBA job overall is growing, right? Like your tech space is growing very fast. It's growing very rapidly because of COVID. Okay. A lot of tech companies have increased the amount of hires they do on campus and like outside of that too. So overall the job market, at least at an MBA level, is not impacted. Okay. So there is some impact onto like the overall job market and like your jobs, but your post MBA jobs have literally like absolutely zero impact from what I saw. Okay. Secondly, I get your point, right? Like even that was something in my mind, that I have a very stable job, like with no risk of like means getting fired or like anything like that, and I can sort of retain that for another 5 years. Okay. Do I want to do that versus like maybe wait another or 2 years and like see out this pandemic and then go to an MBA? It was, I would say, a challenging question. So my line of thinking was that, oh, m- do I want to like, it wasn't even about like jobs or something. It was mainly about like, do I want to spend another year and like sort of when I know I want to do an MBA and I have like an admit onto this, do I want to wait another year? Like, do I want to waste another year in this job now? Okay. Because at that point, like I knew that, oh, I'm going to do an MBA like maybe today or like a year from today. So that year which I'm going to spend is not going to be that productive to my whatever I want to do eventually, right? And that was part of it. Okay. Another part of it was like I think I did not think that the pandemic would continue for so long. I was one of those optimistic people at start who was like, oh, maybe it will get over and like it will get over soon and like, but it turned out like no one predicted how it's going to turn out, right? No one would have thought that half of the world would still be in lockdown like after like a year and a half, which is weird. But that's how it was. I think overall, I don't look back at that as a wrong decision now. Like in hindsight, right? Means if I look back, oh, should I have waited another year? I would be doing exactly the same thing which I was doing like 6 months back. During this year, I've had a lot of learning. Okay, I've like spent a lot of time learning new things, lot of interesting things which I have learned, which has been pretty good. Okay, the only thing which has been missing a bit in like this COVID experience is a lot more about your networking with your classmates. Okay. Otherwise, it has been a very, very stable MBA. Like from an educational standpoint, like your classes are run almost similarly. I've been going to my classes for like I think 6 months now. So we get to go into classes. They're very COVID safe. So you get to do your tests like once a week. It's mandatory that way. And the university is like they have a lot of money, so they have set up their own testing centers, their own like basically they have their own infrastructure about this. They have their own vaccination infrastructure too, and like luckily the state I am in, I'm eligible for a vaccine in like 15 days. So I'm going to get like my first shot in 15 days. So it all overall worked out. But I think I took a right decision. Like, but it was a challenging decision at that point, like just to leave a stable job and go for an MBA at that point.
Makes sense. It's been quite the journey for you, right? That's echo, I think. Oh, okay. So it's been quite the journey for you. Like you started from Peck, and you've had 6 years at a corporate. You funded most of your education. But वो college वाला जो part होता है ना, that mostly people they want to do an MBA on campus also because being a student has its own thing. वो एक fun होता है that you are probably missing out on right now. थोड़ा FOMO है उस चीज़ का. So what was tech like for you? And then we'll trail for your journey आगे.
Okay, Peck for me was very fun. I have so many funny memories. Like whenever I sit back with folks, like almost everyone who I have as colleagues here from India is from an IIT, and like I keep on telling them stories about Peck. Like, oh, we did this and we did that. But it was like a quite fun experience for me. Like I spent somewhere, means I spent most of my time at Peck actually, even the summers. Okay, so I was here during most of my summer time, uh, and I did so many things all across. Like means. I don't know, like means what things I should be talking about and what things I shouldn't be. But
Everything.
yes.
We'll filter it out.
So we did like means, for example, like we did a lot of things. We used to like go to, so our go to spot was like the PGI canteen at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and that's when I would have like my dinner come breakfast, which was very weird. I would still wake up at 8 to attend my classes. I don't know if you guys have classes at 8. We did have them, and I would go into the class and sleep, and I would have like the preferred benches where I knew that, oh, the professor wouldn't see you and you could sleep easily, and then like wake up during like attendance and like give attendance. uh Otherwise, like it was a pretty fun time. Like I think I missed out a lot on the clubs part. Like I didn't participate in that many clubs and didn't do that, but I had a very good friend circle, like means a very big, and we were doing something like every day of, like means every week, like, and every day there would be one or the other thing happening. You would sleep at like 3 or 4. I was so sleep deprived and peck that when I went back home, all I did was sleep. So I would go back home like once every 2 or 3 months, and when I went back, I would just sleep and do nothing else. Like means sleep for like means 13, 14 hours a day, and then just like be awake for 7, 8 hours. And that's how I would describe my peck experience. It was pretty fun. Did a lot of things, like did lot of like, I would say non-fun things too, but it was overall pretty fun.
Non-fun like what?
So I did all my assignments myself, which,
Arre.
which most people don't do. I was not a dasi, so that is a difference. Like I used to like some classes and I would make a lot of effort, and then there were classes like, oh, I don't think this is relevant and I am totally going to ignore it. So I had like a variety of grades, like ABCs, and I actually had, I think in the end, like I had somewhere a CGPA just touching 9, so it was pretty good.
And that's a lot of marks. That's like two
Yeah.
people here cumulatively can pass with those marks.
So are you still connected to your friends who were there from tech? Like,
Yes. Yeah, I think that definitely has been my best outcome out of Peck, outside of education and all, like the job which it gave me. Like I still have, I'm very well connected to that friend circle. We are like, we have a WhatsApp group and all. We have video chats like once every 2 or 3 weeks. So it's still a very widely connected circle which is there, and that's something which I would advise you definitely. Like means make sure you build in that network. Like most of you would already have been, but build in within your class, outside of your class, and have that network, like sort of a stable network which you can always rely on, right? It might not just be for like means for your own personal purposes, but it helps you it keeps you sane basically. You always have people to talk to no matter what comes up. Like for most of you, right, like it's corporate life, or like even post that, it's not a very, I wouldn't say it's not a very like stable where you like just keep on growing. You have like your ups and downs throughout, okay, and you always need some sort of help, or just like a talking board, right? Like people you can just talk to and speak anything, and then they're just like, ah, okay, yes. So keep that network. Make sure you keep in touch with them, and like you keep it throughout post life. So there is one thing which we used to always say in Peck, like, oh, there is this limit of like, if you keep in touch with people for 7 years, you keep in touch with them for life. So 7 years is that golden mark. So make sure you hit that 7 years, and then it would continue automatically.
That's also, I think, a scientific observation, right?
Yeah.
It's all over social media that
Yeah.
friends who stay friends for 7 years.
stay
Any
together.
yeah, stay together. Any graduation trips that you did? Like how we say ना कि कोई कांड किया था कॉलेज में, किसी प्रोफेसर को तंग किया था.
Then I think we did a lot of that. Like we did a lot of trips. Okay. Uh, we were actually out like almost every 2 months or something, and all of us were like very short of cash, so we would take the cheapest way. I traveled a lot in like this Indian Railways, like passenger class and all. We went to Rajasthan, and like traveled in local buses and all of that. Did a lot of like stayed at like dharamshalas and all of it. It was pretty fun because you had like your set of fun people with you, and like then you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like let's go into whatever it is. We'll still keep on enjoying. Uh, I traveled like almost all over Rajasthan during that time, like covered all the cities, covered all the cities of Himachal, like means we went a lot of trekking into Himachal, like crossed like the Himadri range on foot, and like it was a very, very interesting time. Luckily at my time, they did allow like cars and bikes on campus. So a lot of my friends, I had a bike, a lot of my friends had cars. So we could actually go to like, means we could go to like Kasoli like at a moment's notice at night, or like means we could go to like just the hill ranges, get tea like when it was very hot, go there, it's very cold, and get tea. And like it was pretty fun that at that point. uh, as for like professors, I think we did a lot of shit, like means especially with like how to get attendance up to 80%. And a lot of people would be like, oh, how do I get like a medical certificate, and like how do I get this, how do I get that. So we did a lot of like, we got like so we went to like one of the common things which we did was we would go to like the sector 16 like government hospital and say like sir ulti aa rahi hai, and all, like he like just give you some random medicine, and it was a government hospital, so there is no cost, and he'll give you like a this, and then you just submit that and like as a proof that you were sick that day. So uh, but otherwise too, we did I think let me remember, like I'm just trying to think the things which I think I should share and things which I shouldn't. But there were like lot of things. We one thing fun which I do remember doing is, so Peck has a lot of fruit trees, right? Okay,
Yes.
so I have eaten like fruits from almost all of those trees. Okay, we harvested
Really?
mangoes, and yeah, we got mangoes, we harvested them, we like kept them in it or ate them, and it actually somehow did something to my throat. I couldn't speak for like a week or so. So but
Oh,
I still didn't stop trying. Like the boys hostel I think had a lot of this like blackberries, like jamuns and all. uh, Ate a lot of those, like got sick from that too, but it was very fun, like means. And it was like it was a new experience every day or something, so we were always like thinking of things to do or like not do and all.
What boys' hostel were you in? You were in Shivalik or Himalaya?
At when I came in, like we actually rotated across. So we started in Shivalik. So we started in like the first one, I think it was Shivalik, and then like we went to Aravali, Himalaya, and then like I think it was basically a rotation of four.
So,
Yeah.
सबसे favorite, like the most memorable one with the most cands that you've done, वो कौन सा hostel है?
I think we did like cards in like every year, but second year was most memorable because one of my like, your hostel rooms are usually very small in boys hostel, right? Because it's a single room. Okay, but one of my friends in Aravali, he lucked out and he had like a triple bedroom just to himself. Okay,
Oh.
like the room structure was like that. Like, so what we did was like all of us got in our mattresses and all put it in his place, and we would always be hanging out in that one room. Like we did a lot of shit there, but it was like a very, very nice 1 year till we had that big room where all of us could like play games and do stuff and all. Like,
It sounds good. Sounds like quite the hostel college experience.
yeah.
So moving forward, if we see your journey on a PEC से GS चलेगा हम dream company, like people even now कोई place होता है like bro तेरा तो GS हो गया bro. Was that still a thing? Like when you got placed, your friends, right? Party चाहिए, the belting, and
Yes,
all of
I
those
got belted a
things.
lot. Okay, I actually survived a lot of it because okay, I got placed on a long weekend. Most of the college was home or they'd already gone back. Okay, so but the people who did not get placed, they beat me up a lot. So like I still remember that the belting and all. I tried to escape, but my bike wouldn't start, and like I had a kickstart bike back then, so it was a very funny experience. And the good thing was like it was two of us who were trying to escape. Both of us had gotten to GS, and I was the driver, so he was behind me, and they were hitting us with belts. So it took a time for him to understand if he gets down, like they'll start hitting me. So, but yeah, eventually that was that I remember. I think at that point, like I did not have it. It was a very fun experience. I still remember a lot of it. So at that point, okay, when we got placed, there weren't that many people in hostel, right? And I think I had like two or three friends who were like staying in hostel, like who hadn't gone back home for a long weekend. And we decided to go out to eat, and I didn't have that much money, so we decided to go to like a dhaba or something. Okay, but we said, oh, we'll go to a fancy dhaba, not like the sector 11 one which we used to keep on going. So we went to like Sethi dhaba, okay, which is like on Zirakpur side of it, right? It's the
Tirupur
one where
Road.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, a lot of Gurdas man, like he has like he's only playing Gurdas man songs, and like it's. So we went there, we ate. Okay, one of my friends. So firstly, he miscomputed our bill by like a lot. I think he charged just like 1/4 of what we ate. Okay. And we were like, oh, let's go and tell him. And he had this quotation written on like his, like where the billing counter was, that Setha to set, Sethi set, Baki sare photo state. And one of my friends was a Baniya, and he's like, oh, he's like not being friendly with like the other Baniyas, and he's like, oh, he's the only set, so let's not tell him. Like a set can't even bill, like what is a set worth? So we ate for free. Okay. We lost a phone that day on our, like where we were sitting. We lost a set of keys, so we had to come back twice, knowing that we paid a lot less bill, which was pretty fun. And then like we went back, and the next day, GS took us to actually a 5-star hotel and all. Okay, and that was the first time I have gone to a 5-star hotel. I had never been to one, and I think it was like Taj in Sector 17 or something. Okay, and I had no idea how you're supposed to eat and like what you're supposed to do. And I had a friend who actually was from a military background, like his father was in military and all. So that morning I asked him like, oh, how do you keep your spoon? And he told me like, oh, you keep your spoon on this side, your cutlery on this side, and this is how you cut it. And like he showed me on YouTube videos that, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. Because I was like, oh, I've lucked out my way into Goldman Sachs. I don't want to give them like, oh, that this guy came from a village and doesn't even know how to use a spoon. I did not know like which. So it was a pretty fun experience. So I woke up next morning. I'm like, oh, I want to go to this like whatever brunch at like 12, and like you tell me what do I do. And like I had a friend there who hadn't drunk till then. Okay, and he wanted to have a celebratory drink at that hotel, and they were serving a champagne, and he was like, oh, like means would I, like he's sitting beside me, he's like, oh, would I vomit like if I drink this? Can I drink this? And I'm like, oh, you can. It's just like sparkling water, so you can drink. And he's like, oh, it took so much convincing like for him to like have one champagne glass, but I still like, it was a very good time for me, and it's just because of that I remember most of this still, like most of like it's very fresh in my memory, even if it was like I think now 8 or 9 years back in like 2013 or something, or 2012 even, so 9 years back.
Even I was wondering, you all those memories so fresh and so clear.
Yeah.
In the same order they happened. So yeah, we can imagine your college life now with the conversations that you had with us.
So
Yeah.
you finance 75% of your college education through the Android app development that you did as an internship, like freelancing during college. So these days, like I know a lot of my friends and a lot of people basically, they try the ones who get into freelancing, like you've done, and you've done it pretty well because you were able to finance like a pretty nice amount. So like what were your methods of tapping the customer bases, and like how would you reach out to people?
Okay, so I think my class overall in itself was very entrepreneurial. Like we had so many people start like different things when I was in college. Okay, like I did a part of it, but like I know a lot more people who started like their full-fledged startups in college campus or like dealing with things like that, which was pretty interesting to see, right? So that sort of creates an informal competition between everyone, and I think Peck is a very good place for that, because you have like the Chandigarh city, which is sort of one of the most developed cities in India. You have a very good like base being in Peck, like very close to that. You can do a number of things, so the potential is there. Okay, for me, at that point, like I was, so one thing why I actually started doing this was like I wanted to have something to write on my CV. Okay, I hadn't joined any clubs. I was spending all my time doing time pass and like all those fun things which I talked about. So I didn't have anything serious to write on my like CV except for like, oh, these are the courses I did. Okay, and before the internship recruitment started, I was like, oh, let me go about and like sort of see, at that point like Android was coming up, so I was like, oh, let me try to build these apps and see like, oh, maybe I can have a project which I can write about on my CV, and that's how it started. What I did was like, one thing which I did is like I thought that, oh, let's take a game which is very popular for like means global market and customize it for India and like sort of put it on Play Store. Okay, and the game which I did was, I don't know how I selected that, but it was like a logo quiz game. Okay, so what I did was like build a very basic logo quiz app, and then eventually like customized it for Indians. I did not do any marketing, any promotion. Okay, I just put it on the Play Store. It I wouldn't say it was a hit, but it had quite a good number of downloads. Like a lot of people were playing it, and I financed most of it like using the Google ads, which you can show in your app, and then like Google will pay you like some proportion of whatever they earn by like showing that app. Uh, Eventually I think it sort of worked out, and then like once I knew that I could make some money this way, I built in few more apps very similar to that. I had to like, the problem was like I had no customer experience, so if I had done it now I would know like how to target and like how to sort of market it to specific folks and like how that is going to work. uh, So I was doing it very randomly. I built in like means I did not know French, but I built in like a French proverbs app. Okay, and it was just like means I knew the proverbs in English, and then I found like a free online source where you would find like equivalent French proverbs, and I built like a visually appealing app, put it on App Store, and I was like, oh, maybe it will get a lot downloaded in France. Okay, and most of the downloads of that app, which became very popular, came in from some African country because like a lot of African countries are actually French speaking, and they're trying to learn more English. Okay, so I had no idea about those things back then. So I wouldn't like say that I was very good at marketing or something. I was just like I was good at building stuff. Like I've always had that. I did spend so just before this, right? Like I spent my first summer, like I was here like in tech like for every summer which was there like all the 2 months. I wouldn't go back home like for a long amount of time. So in the first summer, I spent a lot of time learning like C++ and Java, which is how I learned how to like build these apps eventually. In the second summer, I actually spent a lot of time like learning how to converse in English. So I came from like an English medium school, but I had zero idea how to talk in English. I could write well enough, but I couldn't hold a conversation. So I was like, I have to go back, I have to interview. So what do I do? Like I tried a lot of like IELTS institutes to like see that how did they teach, but they are very different. They are not trying to teach you conversational English, they're trying to teach you that accent. And then like I found a teacher who was teaching like fifth standard kids in like sector 15. She's like, oh, I'll give you like a discounted package, you should help me manage these kids, and then I will spend like half an hour every like day with her, talking with her in English and sort of getting that conversational thing built out, which was like pretty fun. And then eventually it's using that experience like means whatever I learned in my first and second summer is like how I started building these things. And once I went to like my actual this internship, I had some better idea of like how stuff works. I didn't do Java in that internship. I forgot like we're doing like some legacy programming language or something, but I at least gained some understanding of like how do these things work at an institutional level, like how do you deploy things when you're deploying it for like a million folks or something like that, which was pretty interesting. So I would say like treat like I don't know for you guys, like at least for like in my year, we had a lot of free time. Undergrad was like a lot more less academic stressed than what I have now. Like we have a lot of work, we have assignments even before the start of course. So my next semester is starting in like this Monday, and I have assignment due on Sunday. So I have to read about like what the course is about and submit like a 1 or 2 page assignment, which was never the case in PEC, right? Like it's much more casual. So it gives you a lot of freedom what you want to do. Okay. And I wouldn't say have fun in that time, like enjoy a lot. Lot of people like we used to watch a lot of TV shows and all of it. So spend whatever time gives you fun, okay, but learn in that time to like think about like how you can eventually use that time, because it's very rare that you're going to get this much amount of free time anywhere in your job, right? Most of your jobs once you go out are going to be very like competitive. They're going to take a lot of time, okay, and at most places you wouldn't have this much amount of time or like this amount of freedom to do whatever you want to do. So do think about that, like when you are in college as to what you want to do and how you want to invest that time to whichever way that might be.
Right, right.
So essentially, we've seen you transition from college to GS, and then even within GS, from the post of an analyst to an associate to eventually a vice president in such a short span of 6 years. So, can you share your experience over those 6 years, how you've seen the industry transition and seen yourself transition as well in the various fields?
Yeah, I think so. GS like again was a very nice experience for me. I went to GS with like quite a bit of technical knowledge and the thought that, oh, if I just go down, put my head down, and do my work, I'm going to succeed. Okay. When I went there, like I realized that's now how it's going to work. Okay, like means most corporate jobs, like you're supposed to do your work, and then there is something else which you need to do to grow eventually, right? Okay. Luckily for me, like my first manager, which was there, like she was a very nice person, and she mentored me a lot and eventually gave me a lot of confidence as to how to deal with these things. But I think I started like I usually start quite a bit slow before I pick up pace on these things. So my first year or two like were pretty slow. I was still like trying to get a hang of things. Like it takes some time to understand like how GS works and like how basically any company, right, wherever you go, you will take some time to understand like how it works and like how what are the levers in the firm, right? Like which ones do you need to pull to make your things go through. Okay. I learned a lot about communication, like how to be a better communicator, how to be a better networker. Like a lot of things in the firm were actually driven by like you knowing other people even at a lower level. So who you knew and like how you knew them, like how close you were to them is how you could get your stuff done. Uh, no matter where you go, these things are going to be true, right? Like you will still need to know networking, like no matter whatever you're doing, right? Even if you're going to do a pure coding job, that is not something which you can survive in that role, right? Even like the thing is, like, go with an open mindset. Definitely, that is what I would advise all of you. When you join a job, think about like, oh, how do you think you can use this place to eventually learn more and grow more, right? And for me, GS offered that opportunity a lot, actually. Okay, because it was a very different culture. I had moved cities again. Okay, and so I was learning a lot more about like where I was from a regional standpoint. uh, and like I enjoyed that too, like went on, like, for example, lot of trips locally, enjoyed that part. And then from like a GS standpoint, it was a very different firm. Like it was a very, very diverse and a very internationalized firm. In most of the work which we actually did, we had project teammates across regions. So it was very rare that a project team would compose people in your own region, right? So how to make that dynamic work, which is actually quite true, right? And I think that is one of the reasons like a lot of these international firms have not had much impact of COVID, because we were already working a lot more internationally. Like I wasn't working that much with the person next to me as I might be at certain point in time working with someone in like some other region. Okay, overall, there are a few things which worked for me and few things which I think I could have done better. Okay, I could. I was a slow starter, so that is something which I think I could have done better. Like taken more initiative up front. I was a bit slow in like having people given the initiative and then telling me what to do before I started picking things on myself. But mostly it was a very, very like educating experience. Like I learned a lot from it. And but if I were to pinpoint one thing, right, like that, this is what I think helped me grow. It was definitely like always putting your hand up and saying, "Oh, maybe I'll do this." Okay. No matter what came through, like, oh, if there was like a challenge that, oh, we need someone to do this, I was always the one who was like, oh, do you want me to do this? I can do this. Even though it might be a task which I might not enjoy. It might be a manual task where you're just like copying cells from Excel or like doing something random. But I wanted to explore as much of it as I could, and I could. So I would always put up my hand up, and that eventually shows up to your leadership at some point, right? They would see you and know that, oh, this guy is a go-getter, and like this person is always taking the initiative, so let us give him something which we think he can handle and all. And eventually that's how, like, in GS there is a business principle which says that you have to be long term greedy. Okay, so you still have to be greedy, but you don't have to be like, you don't have to look at your immediate gain, right? You have to look at a long term greed perspective, which is you have to look at like, oh, 5 years down the line, would I be better off doing what I am, or like would I be worse off, right? I could be worse off for like 6 months doing the project which I am, but maybe at the end of 6 months I would have gained enough experience that I would get better projects down the line. So always think of it as like from a long term standpoint. I know a lot of people, it does not work out that well for them in the corporate structure. Like most people, when they actually do join a job, get lost with how it works. Okay, and like a lot of people do complain about, because I keep on talking with like sort of my friends from Peck. A lot of people do complain about office politics, things like that. Okay, but those things are going to be everywhere. It's sort of human nature to do politics, human to play favorites with other folks. Okay, so there are things which you can control and things which you can't, right? So it's for you to think about like, oh, how best do you think what you can control? Okay, and think of it from a very long term standpoint always. Like, means don't think of it in the short term where you're like, oh, maybe if I quit this job today and like join some other firm, I'll get like 10% pay hike, and I'm not getting that hike here. Maybe think about like, oh, if you stay 5 years at a place, what is, if you're just looking at it from a monetary perspective, right? Still, money is very important. I wouldn't say that, but look at that from a long term standpoint. Don't look at like, means eventually I would. So I was doing a lot of hiring when I was in GS. We were like doing hiring, like we were hiring almost every month, like a candidate or something. Okay, and these things do get noticed, right? Like if I see a resume where like a person has switched like 4 teams in the last like he has switched like 4 firms in the last 4 years. Okay, do you think like you as a person would be like, oh, do you think they will survive at your firm for like more than an year? No, right? Okay, whereas a person who has spent a lot of time at a firm, okay, maybe they might survive better. Okay, it is eventually a long term, right? It matters as to how you put in that, like, oh, why do you want to switch or something like that. So think about it always from a long term, and think about things which you think you can control and things which you can't control. Don't try to solve everything at once and be like that one stop shop guy.
Like, that's a great approach, honestly, to weigh these options. So we understand that fintech is a very varied domain. It's an umbrella for a lot of things. right? And you have listed derivatives in it. So could you tell us a little, like a small summary about what fintech entails and where listed derivatives stand?
Yeah. So fintech again, just like you said, right, is a very very diverse domain, right? It's basically, so money is everywhere. Like no matter what you do, every there is a transfer of money happening at every point, and fintech is just basically making that finance happen through a technical standpoint. Okay. Now this might like a lot of people would have a different opinion of like what they would classify as a fintech firm versus what is not. Okay, but generally I think a very diverse view is like any firm which deals with money is a fintech firm. Okay. And then like even so you have these specific fintech firms, like for example your established players like Visa, MasterCard, things like that. If you read like Stripe was just valued yesterday for like $100 billion, which is very astonishing. And then you have like these niche players which are like, for example, in India you have like Pesa Bazaar or like Paytm, which are like very specific, like addressing like very niche areas into that. Okay, and then you also have like these big tech firms who have like their own fintech ventures, right? Like WhatsApp Pay, for example. Okay, Facebook is not a fintech firm, but the WhatsApp Pay team is specifically targeting like a very fintech sort of problem. Okay, so I would say it's basically on anything to do with finance across, and it's a very diverse field, right? Like it might be dealing with like lendings, there might be dealing with payments, so that's how most people classify it, as lendings and payments. But then there are so many other things, right? Okay, the listed derivative part of it which I was working with, okay, again like GS was a very established firm, right? So we were the part of which I was in is a brokerage firm which is very similar to like Zerodha or like Robinhood or something, but it was a brokerage for like your very again big companies and not for individual investors. Okay,
Right,
and there
right.
are like services which you offer to these big investors which you wouldn't offer to like individual folks. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what we did was we were looking at like listed derivatives market connectivity, where you are actually connecting to all these big listed derivative exchanges and clearing houses. So listed derivatives is basically your futures and options. I think they teach part of it in fourth year in pick 2. Like I did a course which had some part of it, but it's basically just like your equities and like instruments built on top of them too with a future expiry date. And what my team did was like we were like quite technical in that sense, so we were looking at these network protocols of like how an internal system in GS could talk to a market in like US, Europe, when all of them like sort of spoke a very different language. uh, my team was actually quite technical. We did like we need to know like most of our code was in Java, but like most of other, for example, there would be firms which would have their own C++ implementation, so you'd have to support that. There were like some very random stuff like jars which we would have to import, things like that. But it was a very established thing in the sense that like you knew who the players were. Okay, there is a very high barrier to entry cost. Like no one new can sort of enter in this firm and challenge you, because these established players, they value like that time domain which you have been in the market, right? Because there is some sort of trust which has to be established. So that was very interesting. I think if you are looking at the fintech domain, it's a very interesting domain. It's something which I'm also personally looking at as part of my MBA. So I'm co-chair of the fintech club here because I came in from the same thing, and it's a very growing domain, right? Like you have now, and it's growing in like very different tangential directions. You have a lot of fintechs working on like financial literacy, trying to get bank accounts for like poor people. Like in India they have done like, so my professor was actually very impressed with like how in India they have actually this Jindhan accounts which everyone can get account, and not even in US
Mm-hmm.
people can do that. Like it's sometimes it's very hard to afford a bank account in US, whereas he was like, oh, in India they have given bank accounts to everyone, which is very interesting. Again, like that is still a fintech, right? Because it might be still using your established banks, but how do you use that to apply the technology so that everyone can have it? So financial literacy is a part of it, getting people more aware into it. Your payments are always a big one, like your UPI or your things like these. Lending is a big one. Like a lot of the world works with like loans and all of it. So your credit cards is sort of a like a unsecured loan. There are other lending products which are like peer-to-peer lending, things like that. You have this very its own like separate chain going on with block Bitcoin, where like you have a lot of people like investing onto Bitcoin, and that blockchain technology is again its own breakthrough. So it's growing in a very diverse way, and I think it's a very good time to get into the ecosystem. If you want to, like, if you're interested in it, you can connect more with me and I can maybe introduce you to like how you should be approaching which part of it. But it's, I would say it's a very interesting domain, and it's a growing domain, and it's still growing, so it's a very good time to get into it.
Great. Thank you for offering your help of this podcast also. So we've covered PEC, we've covered GS. If we move back to your MBA, right? Like we know online, like this Gmeet, right? So what is it like? Like, do you miss not being able to be a student as a like as an MBA student, not being able to be in the campus?
No, okay. So I actually go to campus. I go to campus like
Oh,
almost every day now. So Yale is very flexible with that as long as you follow COVID protocols and like you basically get tested and all. Okay. So I go to get to campus like half of the days, and then other half I am actually able to swap with folks who are not coming and still able to go. So they
mm-hmm.
are very good with it from that standpoint. I think there is some. I don't think I'm missing anything from an academic standpoint. Like academics have been very good, okay, and we are still like sort of covering exactly the same things. I don't think I've missed something which I would have learned being in a fully like in-person setting versus a hybrid setting. But there is some aspect of it, right? Like there is, for example, you don't get to network with as many folks as you could, which is a very big part of your MBA. But then again, like it means both me and my flatmate I was talking about, right? We keep on hosting people, so it's you
Right.
sort of compensate for that in a different way versus like how you it would have happened organically or naturally, like over like a water cooler conversation or something like that. But I think that is going away, right? I still have an year. They even have commencement in person, which means they're planning to get us all vaccinated by like mid May, and then get us 100% back into campus. So hopefully, I'm not going to miss a lot of it and still build those connections in the next year, whatever I want to do.
Great. So how is the cultural shift? Like you were in India for a long time, I think all of your life before moving to US, right?
Yeah.
So ghar ka khana, the people, the language, mummy ke phone, all of that. How is that
I
working out?
I think it's like means I was again like out of my home for a very long time. Like so
Mm-hmm.
I come from a like village back in Punjab. I was in Chandigarh for 4 years, Bangalore for 6 years, and then like US now for like almost 1 year. So I don't think it has been very hard on me, given that like I've been out of my home for a very long time. Even from a language standpoint, like if you live in Bangalore, you don't speak the local language mostly, right? Means, but in here you can at least understand everyone talking. So it's a bit different that way. Yeah, but you can still get around in Bangalore. Uh, I
Yeah,
think
Bangalore
it's
autobalas are very, sorry,
yes,
Bangalore autobalas, they're very famous, right? For their
yeah.
anger and aggression.
Yeah, I think Bangalore and Chennai both, if they know that you don't speak the language, they might try to fleece you. So there are tips and tricks which you have to sort of follow, like means. But nowadays you have Uber and all of that, so it's not much of an issue. Uh, but overall, like I think it has been good. Like just like I was talking about earlier, right? The diversity of people which you have here, like means I've met like so many different people from so different backgrounds, and that itself sort of mellows down the cultural shift a bit because you're not sort of forced into one single culture, right? I have people from like means different like nationalities. Like when we had actually a New Year thing, we met people from like I think 10, 15 different nationalities because like different people sort of came about. Like you have a lot of Chinese folks, like Australians, a lot of Europeans, and it's sort of a very mixed culture, right? Which is actually very good because there is no single culture that is being enforced on you. You're not like getting into one, like there is no American culture per se here. Okay, it's a very young university town where I am at. Everyone sort of follows their own thing, so it's good, I would say. The thing which I've struggled with the most is cold. So I actually have experienced cold before. I was in Salt Lake City for 3 months during the winter months, but the cold here is even like in New England is much worse. And we had a lot of snowstorms. I'm just hoping that there is no more snowstorms. There was snow last week. It wasn't that bad, but the snowstorms are very bad and it's very windy, and that cold literally like chills down your spine. So you have to wear like lot of clothes before going out. You need to sort of dress up every time, and then you go to some other place, and like it's not like India where you wear a sweater and you can just like wear it outside and wear it inside. So you have to like undress when you go to someone's place, like remove your two jackets, and then eventually you go back, you wear it back again. It's a different experience. And coming first time and like sort of surviving through this whole winter has been a bit tough. But it has been good. Like it sort of like struggling in the winter has a lot been because you're like enclosed to your like home and all. You can't go out, and you already have Zoom fatigue. Like you're looking at your computer screen a lot of your day, and then like even in your free time, you still all you can do is look at your screen because outside it's so cold and there is no one outside. You can't do anything, so you have to keep on doing the same, which I think is the hardest part for me in this cultural shift. But overall, it has been pretty good. Like the college has a lot of resources, and most colleges do have that. It's a very diverse college, so that helps a lot too. Like means eventually with the people you meet and all of it.
Okay. So I thought Ishita had something to ask. Right. So I think we've covered almost everything. Is there anything like we might have missed out on that you were keen to talk to us about? Anything that came
Um,
up?
I, I think there is one thing which I think you guys all should know now that you are in campus. Okay. I think campus time is like a great time, so you should enjoy it and all. Okay. But once you move out, okay, make sure like you keep in connect with all your fellow Pecobians, like your undergrad network, not only year, but like years higher than you or lower than you is always very, very useful. And given that like means Pec sort of is like a very small branch, like I would say know as many people as you can, but even if you don't know them, don't hesitate to reach out to folks. Okay. Making that extra bit of effort to sort of customize whatever you're trying to reach out to them for. Like LinkedIn now is a great tool to, for example, find your like fellow Pecobians, right? And then like even in that, when you reach out to them, like means I can give you a personal example for like if you reach out to me, okay, and you have some specific questions, most of the folks will be very happy to help you. But if you just send me like a generic connect request, there is a very strong chance that I'm not going to accept it. But if you just type in, for example, a very small description that, oh, I'm trying to recruit at GS, like can you give me any tips, I will definitely see that, accept your request, maybe even like talk to you or message you back. And that's not just me; it's true for most of the folks. Okay, so make sure you keep those connections active. Like use your undergrad network, use your network which is like your other years. Okay, and use their help. I have been like Pecobians have been very friendly, even in like my MBA recruiting and all. I have found people like who I did not know, and I reached out to them. Oh, you did an MBA like from like Yale or like NYU, and like, oh, you went to this place, like can you tell me how this is like? And all of them have been very friendly, and like I've been able to network with them. So but do make out that effort. I think even in India the job space will like sort of switch to that, from like a very organized recruiting how it works in India now, to versus like how the US model is, where like you make the effort and reach out to the company, and then they review your resume and then sort of invite you for an interview. It will move there at some point. And in that model, like it's very important to have that network like at every firm, right? Like make sure that you do that. And that's like one thing which I want to like should make sure that all of you do while you are at campus.
We'll definitely keep
We'll
that in
definitely
mind.
keep that in mind.
100%.
100%.
So,
So,
I think that's
I
Echo
think that's
again,
echo.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay, okay. So, Hanur, I think we've covered everything. We've covered your life in Chandigarh, New
Yeah.
Haven, your Bangalore life. We didn't get to cover. Actually, I think we did. We did cover everything. Sorry, my bad. So,
Yeah. I just have one last question, Noor, if you like, if I
yeah.
can. So, I visited your LinkedIn profile and it's very well structured. So, like, I personally wanted to ask you for like how, or like, if you have some tips on how you built it and what it basically is the importance of LinkedIn. Like, now that we are going out and we need to create a profile and network it a bit. And like, what is the importance of LinkedIn that you felt, and like, how much effective has it been overall?
Yeah. I think LinkedIn is a very great networking tool in a professional environment. Okay. And even if you're means so a lot of people think that LinkedIn is something which you should use to actively network. Okay, like or to like when you are recruiting or doing something like that. But I don't think it is just that. Okay. A lot of times when like you meet someone new, okay, I usually like a lot of people would go back and like just search your name on Google, and like the first thing which shows up is your LinkedIn profile. Okay. And if you have a very good LinkedIn profile, and they can basically go back and see what you have in your profile and all of that, okay, it sort of creates a sense of trust, right? Okay. So a LinkedIn profile is important even when like you're meeting new people, okay, or like they're searching about you or anything like that. It's not important only when like you're recruiting, which is a misconception which a lot of people have. Oh, I'm going to not apply for a job, I'm in the same firm, why do I need to keep my LinkedIn up to date? Okay. So you have to like, and as to coming to the question of like why, how to build it, right? Okay, I think it's an incremental process. Okay, you can't build it all in one go. Okay, see what you have as of now. Just like I was talking, right? Like when I was like applying for my internship, okay, I did not have anything to write on my resume, so my LinkedIn profile would have like sort of been totally empty at that point. And luckily I don't think LinkedIn was a big thing back then. Maybe it was, but we didn't use it that much. uh, Eventually it matters a lot like how you write those things. And it's basically just effort, right? I don't think any of you should have any issues like getting that out. It's just a bit of effort, like how much effort you put in, like how you restructure your points. There is a lot of it, like, oh, what you can share, like means for example in my role, right, there are a lot of things which I can't write on my LinkedIn profile, which are not public information. Okay, so how do you sort of translate into a generic enough information so that it still looks impactful, but it is also something quantifiable, right? And then like look at like what you want to share, what do you not want to share. Okay. uh, they do themselves have a very good LinkedIn builder. Okay. And in MBA, like means I actually had my profile much before starting an MBA, and it was like mostly up to date all the time. But even in MBA, they asked us for this. Like they said, oh, it's very important, even if you're not recruiting. A lot of people are going to search your name now, like, oh, Harnoor Sidhu MBA, right? Even if they don't know you directly, if they get to know about you, they are going to look up to you on LinkedIn. And having an up to date LinkedIn is very, very important. So that's how I would go about it. Once you start your job, I don't think you need to sort of like means every small thing you do on your job and you're like, oh, this happened and I'm going to put it. Give it some time, maybe like once a year, keep on periodically refreshing it. Okay. Like spend an hour like once a year, make sure that you whatever you have as of now is reflected in that. Or if you did like any means, for example, any open courses or something, put those in, see what else you can use to be fitted there. I wouldn't say go out and seek recommendations or like give recommendation, that is usually not advisable. But spend some time like consistently over the years to keep it up to date. It will be a lot more useful to you than you actually think it is going to be.
Yeah, that's a really important, useful information. I think it's echoing. Yeah, so now I know that how important it is, and like we need to really be up to date and maintain the profile, not just from the industry point of view, but also otherwise.
And highlighting how you talked about how LinkedIn is an effective tool, that's how we were able to search for you and then finally bring you on board for our podcast. So I think that shows how important and how useful LinkedIn can be. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. And I think we've had a great discussion, really insightful, and our viewers will certainly love the content that came across and we'll learn a lot from your experience. And
I think no, I really appreciate you folks doing this. I think when I was in undergrad, like one of the things why I jumped and said yes at the first opportunity is because I never had this perspective myself. Like when I was in undergrad, like I went very blind into things. When I joined GS, it was like oh, GS was the first company that came in for placements, and I was like, I want to go there because it's like GS brand. And then like I got in, and I'm like, oh, I'm happy I got in. I had no idea what I'm going to do at GS, but to have this sort of idea as to like what different exit paths are, it will help people decide better, right? Like you shouldn't go by brands all the time, even though they are important, but look at like how your long term you view it is, and then use that to decide where you want to be.
Right, that's exactly what our prerogative is with this podcast, just to make people aware that there's other things out there on the same lines and not always the trodden path, I guess. So, which is why your path is one of those which not a lot of people know about. This was a great podcast. We thank you for your time, and we had a lot of insightful information with us now. Uh, I think I can't see anybody's that. I think an error on like a glitch on my part.
Yeah, that is your
That's probably a network
network.
error on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
part, right?
so with that, I think we can formally end the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Hanur.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.